I, female, 34, just discovered my husband, male, 36, has been having an affair and secretly took out $70K in loans to fund it. Throwaway for obvious reasons. My husband knows my main account and I can't deal with him seeing this right now. So I work as a financial analyst, ironic I know, and have always been the one to handle our finances. Like I'm the spreadsheet person in our relationship, always have been. Darren and I have been married for 8 years, together for 10. We met at our mutual friend Jake's New Year's party back in 2014 and dated for 2 years before getting married. He was charming and stable, and everything my dad wasn't. More on that later. Anyway, I was going through our tax documents yesterday. Procrastinated this year. BC work has been insane lately. I'm at this mid-sized financial services firm and my boss has been dumping extra projects on me. I noticed some weird inconsistencies in our joint accounts. There were these withdrawals I couldn't explain, and when I asked Darren about them, he got all weird and snippy, claiming they were work expenses and asking why I was interrogating him. I figured he was just stressed about this big presentation he had coming up, so I dropped it. But something felt off, and being a financial analyst, I couldn't just let it go. Also, my dad cheated on my mom and destroyed our family when I was 16, so I'm probably extra paranoid about this stuff, I don't know. I kept digging and oh my freaking god what I found. There were loan statements I'd never seen before. Credit card bills showing hotel charges at places we've never been to together. Expensive restaurant tabs. A $3,200 charge at a jewelry store I've never received anything from. So I did what any rational person would do. I went full detective mode. We have a shared computer at home. I have my work laptop, but we have a desktop we both use. And I found a loan confirmation email notification. I opened his email. Yes, I know that's invasive, but at this point I was freaking out. And there it was. All of it. Emails between him and some woman named Heather. She's 29 and works as a luxury real estate agent. There were selfies of them together at all these places that matched the hotel charges. The emails went back a year, a whole fucking year. But the money part is what's making me physically sick. He took out over $70,000 in personal loans. $70,000 to fund weekend getaways, expensive dinners, jewelry for her. And get this, he's been helping her with her condo payments, while telling me we need to keep saving for our dream house and that we're not financially ready for kids yet. I can't even process this. We went to Spain 3 years ago and decided to start saving aggressively for our future. We've been living below our means specifically to save for a house and eventually kids. He's been telling me for years that we need to wait on having a baby because we're not financially stable enough yet. And the whole time he's been spending tens of thousands on his side piece. Last night I printed everything out. All the bank statements, the loan docs, the emails, the photos. I spread it all across our dining table and waited for him to get home. When he walked in, I just pointed to the table. He looked confused at first, then his face changed completely. He tried denying it at first. When I confronted him, he asked why I was going through his emails. I just sat there staring at him until he looked at the evidence more closely. When he saw I had the emails with Heather, he tried to downplay it, saying it was just physical and didn't mean anything. I asked about the loans. He actually had the nerve to say he could handle the payments and it wasn't a big deal. Not a big deal. We've been putting off starting a family because he said we couldn't afford it, and he's spending money on another woman. He kept begging for another chance. Said Heather meant nothing to him, that he loves me, that he felt entitled to some excitement while maintaining our stable marriage. Those were his exact words, like our marriage was some boring chore and he deserved a fun escape. I didn't scream, I didn't cry, I just felt empty. I grabbed my pillow and went to the guest room. I've been here since last night, barely slept. I don't know what to do. Part of me wants to throw his stuff on the lawn and change the locks. Part of me wonders if we could ever get past this with counseling. I know that sounds pathetic after what he did, but 10 years is a long time to just throw away, right? Or am I being a complete doormat, even considering forgiveness? Oh, and to make everything more complicated, his parents were apparently planning to help us with a house down payment soon as a reward for being so financially responsible. They have no idea about any of this. They've always been super proud of how Darren manages money. His dad is literally a retired financial advisor who built himself up from nothing, and they raised Darren to be extremely careful with money. Edit, holy crap, this blew up overnight. I crashed after taking a sleeping pill my doctor gave me for anxiety. Been having trouble sleeping even before this happened. and woke up to hundreds of comments. I'll try to answer the common questions. To everyone asking if the loans are in both our names, I'm checking on that today. Since we're married, I'm worried they might be considered joint debt regardless. Talking to a lawyer tomorrow. For those asking about Heather, no, I haven't contacted her and don't plan to. Some of you suggested she might not know he's married, but from the emails it's clear she knows. There were messages about being discreet and working around my schedule. Yes, I've taken screenshots of everything and backed them up in multiple places. I'm not an idiot. Sorry, that came out harsh. Just feeling defensive about everything right now. To the people saying I should tell his parents, I'm conflicted about this. They've always been really good to me, and I don't want to be the one to break their hearts. But also, I feel like they should know before they give us money for a house. This is all so messed up. A lot of you are asking why I didn't notice the loan payments coming out of our accounts. We have separate personal accounts in addition to our joint account. I now realize he's been paying these loans from his personal account, which is why our joint savings still looked on track. I never monitored his personal account because I trusted him. Stupid, I know. Now for the first update. First, thank you to literally everyone who commented and messaged me. I read everything, even if I couldn't respond to all of it. I'm still kind of in shock and just processing everything. For those asking for updates, well, here we go. So after that night when I confronted him, I basically went into autopilot mode. I called in sick to work for a couple days. My boss was actually super understanding, which was surprising because she's usually a hard ass about everything. I contacted a divorce attorney that my friend Brianna recommended. The attorney told me to document everything and not to move any money around yet because that could look bad. She said I should keep track of all our normal expenses versus his affair expenses because that might help with the divorce settlement. And speaking of money, it gets worse. I found another loan, like a whole second personal loan I didn't know about. So now we're talking about almost $95,000 in debt, not the $70K I originally thought. $95,000. That's like a down payment on a house in most places, or college tuition, or, our future that he kept saying we needed to be responsible about. I haven't been sleeping well, obviously, so I've been staying up watching this baking competition show that I used to watch with my grandma before she passed. I mean, I cry through everything these days, so whatever. The attorney says that even though we're married, and technically the debt could be considered ours, she thinks we have a good case to argue that he should take responsibility for all of it since it was used for the affair. I really hope that works out because the idea of paying for his affair makes me sick. So here's where things got even more complicated. I was talking to Virginia, Darren's sister, last week. We've always been close, and she called to check on me because I'd been avoiding family stuff. I was trying to be vague about why Darren and I were going through a rough patch, but then she casually mentioned that her parents were planning to help us with a house down payment soon as a reward for being so financially responsible. They were about to give us like a huge amount of money because they were so impressed with how he managed finances. For years, I've watched Darren get anxious before seeing his parents, and I always thought it was just because he wanted to impress them. Turns out he was probably terrified they'd find out what a fraud he is. I sat with this information for days. I really didn't want to be the one to tell his parents, but I also couldn't let them give us money under false pretenses. I've always had a good relationship with Harold and Diana, my in-laws. They're good people who work their asses off to build what they have. Harold is literally a retired financial advisor who is super serious about money management. After a lot of thinking, and honestly advice from you guys on my last post, I decided I needed to talk to them. I told Darren I was meeting Brianna for dinner and drove to their house instead. When I got there, Diana offered me tea in the good cups. They have these special cups they only use for family, and asked if everything was okay because I looked tired. Harold was watching some history documentary, but turned it off when I came in. I started by saying I needed financial advice, which wasn't a lie. I showed them some of the bank statements and loan documents. I'd made copies of everything. Harold immediately got this look on his face. He knew something was wrong right away. He started asking really specific questions about whether I was aware of these transactions. I tried to stay calm, but I just couldn't anymore. I broke down and told them everything. The affair, the hotels, the jewelry, the helping with her condo payments, the lying for a whole year. Diana kept saying, "Not our Darren," over and over like she couldn't process it. Harold's face got redder and redder as I showed them more evidence. I showed them some of the emails too. Not the explicit ones, obviously, but enough to prove what was happening. Diana started crying quietly, which made me start crying again. Harold called Darren a disgrace to everything we taught him, and looked more disappointed than angry. Then Diana told me they were literally about to give us $100,000 for a house down payment. $100,000. She said they'd been planning it for months. Harold said they needed time to process everything and would talk to Darren themselves. They both hugged me before I left and thanked me for being honest. They thanked me. I felt so terrible for them. I came home completely emotionally drained. Darren wasn't home, probably with her, so I took one of the sleeping pills my doctor prescribed for my insomnia and turned my phone off. I just couldn't deal with anything else. I never wanted to cause family problems. That's honestly the last thing I wanted. But at the same time, I'd be lying if I said I didn't feel a tiny bit of satisfaction knowing he'd have to face his parents and explain himself. Is that terrible? After everything he's put me through, maybe he deserves to face some consequences. Edit. Woke up to so many more messages and comments. Thank you again for all the support. Edit 2. To everyone asking if I've moved out yet, no, I'm still in the house. The attorney advised me not to leave until we have a formal separation agreement, because in our state, it could potentially affect property division. So I'm stuck in the guest room for now. Edit 3. A lot of you asked if Heather, the affair partner, knows about the financial situation. From what I can tell from the emails, she thinks he's some big shot who can easily afford all this stuff. She has no idea he's drowning in debt to maintain this lifestyle for her. Edit 4. Several people mentioned that I should get tested for STDs. Already done. All clear, thankfully. That was literally one of the first things I did after finding out. Now for the second update. So, a lot has happened since my last post. Like, a lot. I'm sorry I didn't update sooner, but everything's been happening so fast, and I've barely had time to process anything. So many of you asked for updates and were so supportive. I figured I owed you all an explanation of the absolute chaos that's been my life these past few weeks. Quick recap, though you can check my post history if you want the full story. Found out husband was cheating with some woman named Heather and took out almost $95 in loans to fund their affair. Told his parents, who were about to give us $100K for a house down payment, and was waiting for the fallout. Well, the fallout came. So I took that sleeping pill I mentioned in my last post and crashed hard. When I finally woke up around 10:30 the next morning, I checked my phone and almost had a heart attack. 37 missed calls, 37. 22 from Darren, 8 from Harold and Diana, my in-laws, and 7 from Virginia, Darren's sister. My hands were shaking so bad I dropped my phone twice trying to listen to the voicemails. The voicemails basically told the whole story of what went down after I talked to Harold and Diana. Apparently, they called Darren for an emergency family meeting right after I left. Harold's first message was just letting me know Darren was there, and things were tense. Darren's messages started calm but got increasingly panicked and angry. He wanted to know what I told them, then started accusing me of interfering and demanded I answer my phone. Virginia's messages were confused. She'd arrived at her parents' house to find everyone yelling and wanted to know what was going on. I pieced together what happened from all their messages. Harold showed Darren all the evidence I'd shown them. Darren tried to minimize it at first, saying it wasn't as bad as it looked. Then Harold told him off harshly and said this wasn't how they raised him. Darren then tried to flip it around and accused me of manipulating his parents against him. Diana apparently had some kind of panic attack during all this and had to take her medication. Virginia arrived in the middle of everything, totally confused about what was happening, and Harold just handed her some of the bank statements and emails. But here's where it gets really intense. Harold told Darren they were changing their will. Like right then and there, decided they were changing their entire estate plan because of this. Darren apparently freaked out and stormed out, which is when he started calling me nonstop. I called Harold and Diana back first, felt like I owed them that. Diana was still upset, but Harold sounded very controlled. They asked if I could come over again, so I showered quickly and drove to their house. When I got there, Virginia was still there too. She hugged me right away and told me she was sorry. Diana made tea again, but her hands were shaking so bad that Harold had to help her. They sat me down and told me they'd made a decision. They were removing Darren from receiving a major portion of their inheritance and putting me in the will instead. They said the money should go to someone responsible. I immediately felt sick. I told them I absolutely didn't tell them about the affair for money. That was never my intention, and I didn't want them to think I was trying to manipulate the situation. Harold got really serious and told me this wasn't about rewarding me, but about consequences for Darren. He said they'd watched him lie to me for years about money while I worked hard and sacrificed, and that wasn't how they raised him. Then Diana took my hand and said they'd always seen me as a daughter anyway. I totally lost it at that point and started crying again. I've cried more in the past few weeks than in my entire life, I swear. The next few days were intense. Darren came home that night extremely angry. He was throwing things and screaming that I'd destroyed his family and ruined everything. Then about 20 minutes later, he was begging me to talk to his parents and convince them to reconsider. He kept switching between calling me manipulative and then pleading with me to fix this. I just stayed in the guest room with the door locked most of the time. I was honestly kind of scared of him, which is a feeling I never thought I'd have about my husband. Virginia called me a few days later with some interesting news. Apparently, Heather dumped Darren after finding out he wasn't as financially stable as he'd been pretending to be. According to Virginia, Darren had been telling Heather he was some big-shot executive making way more than he actually does. When she found out about all the loans and that he wasn't getting the inheritance he'd apparently been bragging about, she bailed. Fast forward 6 months. Yeah, I know, long time no update, sorry. The divorce is finally finalized. The judge agreed that Darren should be responsible for all the loan debt since it was used for the affair. I've maintained a really close relationship with Harold and Diana, despite Darren trying constantly to convince them I manipulated them. I used a small portion of the inheritance they insisted on giving me immediately. I tried to refuse, but they wouldn't take no for an answer, to buy a small condo across town. It's mine and nobody can take it away from me. The most dramatic part of all this happened about a month ago at the attorney's office. Harold and Diana invited me to meet with their estate attorney to finalize the will changes. The attorney explained everything in all this complicated legal language that made my head spin. Diana kept squeezing my hand whenever I looked overwhelmed. Harold explained very clearly that their decision was final, regardless of whether Darren eventually reconciled with them. Then, in the middle of the meeting, Darren showed up. Apparently some family friend who works in the building tipped him off. He burst in and started accusing everyone of conspiring against him. He called me horrible names and called his parents senile old fools. Harold stood up and told Darren very calmly that this was the consequence of his action. Darren threatened to contest the will, and the attorney explained that would be difficult given the circumstances. Darren looked at me with pure hatred, then stormed out, slamming the door so hard a picture fell off the wall. Diana started sobbing, and Harold just held her while giving me this look like he was sorry I had to see all this. It was heartbreaking. So here I am, divorced at 34, living in a new condo, still have my job, thank God, still processing everything. I have really mixed feelings about how everything turned out. Obviously, I'm relieved to be free of a marriage that was built on lies, but I still feel guilty about the family rift, even though I know it wasn't my fault. I've actually started dating again, very casually, just coffee dates, but I'm proceeding with extreme caution. My trust issues are, let's just say, substantial at this point. But honestly, I'm doing okay. Harold and Diana have basically adopted me. They invite me over for Sunday dinners and check on me all the time. Virginia and I get drinks every couple weeks. It's weird having in-laws after a divorce, but they're like the parents I wish I'd had growing up. They even insisted I come to their family cabin for Christmas. Darren wasn't there, obviously.